Hello, in 2 hours I will be getting a haircut. I am very, very excited. It's gotten a little long. Anyways, yes, this has been a crazy month. A lot of different stuff happening, but not a lot of that translated into Patreon content. So I wanted to get you caught up and maybe we'll talk about some lighting and stuff. The green screen shot went really, really well. So fun to film Josh Truex again, and using all of Nate's props was really fun to see him all on camera. My friend Andy Daprowski brought his Ursa Pro Black Magic camera, which was cool. I love shooting on the little DSLRs, and they do really good. But getting some additional color bit depth and some extra resolution for work in post for this scene in particular, because it's all green screen, is really handy. I've been going nuts tracking all of that and keying and already trying to build up the environments. I've got a lot I want to say about this, but I'm not quite ready just yet. It's mostly just things we already talked about in like the Making a Shot series and the YouTube green screen video I posted. I can link to those below. Also, very close to wrapping up the Pete episode. Talked to the sound team, and they're ready to take it on basically whenever, which is very exciting. Also going through and doing the final battle. I've got some like the super powered people flying around in the David McSweet light trails thing, which is fun. I also went back to a green screen scene that wasn't really working for me, but I found this one locked off take where the two characters are just like standing there. So I stuck that in a digital environment I made, and I was able to kind of control the camera digitally and resculpt the scene a little bit in post, which made me like it a lot more. And I still have two big other additional shoots that I really have to get on scheduling. Like they can happen anytime. I just have to get my act together and actually make them happen. But today I wanted to do a video just based off of a request I've gotten numerous times, which is cyberpunk lighting, which I think is kind of an interesting request, but we can get into it. I always really appreciate when questions ask about lighting, because you can take a really mediocre scene, but if you add really good lighting, you can make the scene awesome. And like lighting and composition are totally inseparable, and like those are the most important parts of how your image looks. But a lot of times, especially in digital art, people just like lump that under rendering, like, oh, how did you render that? And it's like, we really need to talk about lighting. However, I do get confused when people ask specifically about cyberpunk lighting, because what is, well, okay, look at this. Because this is what you get when you type in Cyberpunk Alley, and you have to type Cyberpunk something, because if you just type Cyberpunk, you obviously just get the video game now. But if you look through these, there's a lot of really cool stuff, and people put a lot of work into these. And you zoom in on any one of these, and you'll find a bunch of cool things. But like collectively, they feel a little homogenous, and I feel like a lot of them suffer from the same problem compositionally, which is that like the points of highest contrast, the brightest points in the image, are the signage, which can just be scattered all over. So instead of like a strong composition or an area of focus, you kind of just have like a smear of cyberpunkery across the whole thing. And this is actually my second time recording this video, because the first time I was weirdly kind of harsh on that, and it's because I've made a lot of images exactly like that, where I sacrifice the composition for all the details I wanted to put into it, and it's the thing I'm specifically trying to get away from. And so I see this and I'm like, oh, this is exactly the thing I've been trying not to do. In my opinion, the pictures here that work best are the ones that take advantage of the natural composition of the alleyway, kind of the inherent one point perspective of everything converging into the distance, and that's where they put like a light source, in the subject. But that kind of leads me to the second issue I have with a lot of cyberpunk art, which is like the small silhouetted figure syndrome, where whoever's making it knows there should be some human interest, so they stick a little silhouetted person in there, and they're like, look, we did it. There's people living in the alleyway now, but it feels kind of more like a checkbox than really being about them. And if you type in like cyberpunk city, you just get a bunch of giant cities with a little silhouetted person looking at it. And I get it, that's even like a narrative language, small person contrasted against big thing. And I think it's cool, but I'm very passionate about like cyberpunk as a genre, and I feel like a lot of times it's kind of just used as like an aesthetic. But I think this genre is strongest when it's about the people living in that world. Like if we took this alley here and just cropped in right there to like this little restaurant, and spent 5 or 6 days just hand modeling every detail of like this cyberpunk sandwich monger's life, and like all the little labels and tools and stuff he uses there, and just really made it about the person and how they exist in that space, that would to me be just way more interesting than a bunch of like abstract alleys. And like, in fact, with geometry nodes, there's all these tutorials now for like, here, we can auto scatter air conditioning units and cables and, generate facades and stuff with like a click. We can make a cyberpunk alley. And I'm like, well, then maybe that shouldn't be like the art. That should be like the background. Anyways, forgive me very much for getting on that little high horse. It's just because that's where specifically where I'm at kind of creative is. I'm trying to push things in a more character centric direction. And with all that said, let's let's go make some mediocre cyberpunk art. Okay, so first off, when you're in the alley, creating composition is a little bit trickier than usual, just because in a typical landscape, stuff closest to you is at the bottom of the image, and the further up you get, the further away those things are until you get to like, the mountains in the sky or whatever. But in an alley, this is as far away as this, which is as far away as this, and so it's kind of like a radial deal like that. And which means either you want to put like a light at the end so you can immediately kind of see the depth of the alley, or my favorite is stick it in the middle so you have a point, a bright point here, and everything just falls off into darkness on either side. I think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, let's get out of this alley for a second and model something with a specific, background, midground, and foreground. Okay, so this is a really simple scene, but we've kind of set ourselves up for success.
This super simple theme, we've set ourselves up for success.
Because it has, has this foreground here, it has a midground, which is also kind of framing the background, which means, it's a built-in composition. I'm gonna turn the light all the way down, and let's see what it looks like rendered. Straight black. Here, let's hit Shift A, add a sun, and we can angle that in. And kind of whatever we do here, look, you can already see it's dividing it into, the positive, negative space, whatever. And I'm gonna sound very off-puttingly arrogant for a second, but this composition right here, just from that, does more for me than like a lot of those. Like, this is obviously not as good of a render, but compositionally, like you got these triangles here, and you got this layer of like bright foreground, dark midground, light. And things are being divided up. You have we're on a human scale, so we're kind of expected to like be existing here in this world with him instead of him just being like a little thing somewhere else to be like, hey, there's people. And we can change this sun around and like whatever we do is kind of fun because we're playing with the high contrast lighting. I love having the light kind of cut off at his torso like that. I don't know. This just seems very relaxing on a sunny afternoon trying to stay out of the sun. But this is very very much how I like to work. Where I block things in and then I figure out where the sun is, and I kind of dial in that initial composition right off the bat. Because imagine if we put in like a glowing vending machine or something, we'd probably want to put it somewhere in the shadows. We'd have a dark area, and this is where the vending machines would be, as opposed to like, if we do, ooh, I like this where it's all just bounce light. Kind of like it's like the entrance to the subway, and so maybe we could add like another piece here for like as it goes deeper, and we could add like a stairwell or something that people could walk into. And here let's make this not feel quite so split screeny. We'll grab this and slide it over like that, and we can add like our little vending machine light back here. But you can see just from doing that, in my opinion, that kind of already muddies up the composition. Like this was immediately, when you look at this is immediately readable. You go, okay, there's the sun. It's a natural light source. I know how to interpret that. This is, the outside, and you get further inside. Once we add this light, even if we turn it down a little bit, it suddenly throws that all off. And we could do stuff with color temperature. Like I would maybe push this kind of blue, and then we'd make, the sun maybe a little bit warmer, and then you get a little bit of that immediate readability back. But sometimes it really is nice to just leave it nice and simple, which is where I think a lot of those cyberpunk alleys where the light source is just, dozens of distributed little signs, like it's cool aesthetically, but compositionally it can be really hard to work with. And if you ever want something to look good but don't really know how to go about it, just add an area light. Here, look at this. Now you're all like Roger Deakins. Like that looks awesome. And then you have, the focal point and everything falls off and you get that kind of composition. Or you could stick behind him and just really have him be like silhouetted like this. Here, we can change this to be, I don't know, whatever color we want. We can have this be a gradient back here. But also important to remember is that white light can be really, really useful. Like we try to add all of these crazy colors and stuff, but look at this. This just looks so good. And like I like to do entire scenes kind of with colorful lights and save the white light for just emphasizing the subject, and that just makes it your eye immediately draw to it and you understand what the important thing is. Ooh, I like having the lights kind of in the floor like that. What else? What else can we do? I always really love having the light source be right by the camera view, as if you're holding like a flashlight or a flash bulb or something. It just kind of implies you're in a safe space, and the further away you get, the creepier everything gets. If you really do want like all of the neon signs to be a light source, I would recommend go like really dramatic with it. And here, let's line this up with the back wall a little bit and pretend it's like a video billboard or something like that. You could have that, an advertisement or something on that. But by making it really bright, you're giving it some compositional weight, and so it isn't just like a detail, it's an actual like, compositional element. One thing I do like in cyberpunk art is just like the complexity of the silhouettes. Sometimes you have all those cables and things like that. So let's play with that. I'm going to use do an annotation. I'm just going to sample this, and let's add some like, yeah, maybe got a box here. I like the idea of him being plugged into like a vending machine or something like that, as if there's like a VR sprite experience or whatever, and he's been living in it for like 30 years. He's got like a stand. I don't know, but like really putting those cables in front of the light source means that like everything still reads really clear, but you also get just a lot. You're really showing off of your detail, as opposed to like having everything be kind of dark and muddy. Although that still looks kind of cool. So let's have some fun with this. I got this model on Sketchfab. It's a photo scan of an alley, just because this is a lighting tutorial, not a rendering tutorial. Here, let's make sure it's kind of to human scale. This is the height. The height of the average human is 175 centimeters, so we'll shrink this down a little bit. Cool. Yeah, that looks nice, and there's lots of good street level detail. But here, let's try to add like some other apartment type things up here above. Cool, and let's give it a quick material. We'll just call this apartments, load in a base color of some random building. Yeah, we're not even really gonna see these, so I'm not particularly worried here. We'll select all of this and hit U, cube projection, and here, let's slide open the UV editor and just scale that up. If we wanted, we could kind of try to line things up a little bit better, but we don't want to, because this is probably fine. I do want to turn down the specular to just to make things work a little bit better. I'm going to take this and flip it around so it's facing the other way. We've got a little alley. How's that look? Let's add a camera. Go to the end of the alley, and that's okay. Here, I might kind of pull these bits back just a tad. I want to be able to see all the way, to the sky. Let's add a ground. Going to give it a material too, another image texture. It'll be a road. Here, let's just do that one. That should work. That should work okay. In here, I'm just gonna hit U, unwrap, and I don't know what the best way is to go about it. That's kind of interesting. It's already kind of dark, but let's add an area light in here, and let's just start playing around with it. Like that's okay. I think I actually do want to do a spotlight, as if there's something up above. Here, let's make this just like really bright. And here, I'm going to turn the background to black also. What's cool, again, about a setup like this is that you can have your subject here in the middle, but anything in the foreground is just going to become a silhouette, which means it'll read compositionally, but it won't be, like, distracting. And anything in the background will also be kind of getting dark, but you can put other stuff that's kind of still part of the composition, but, like, not as important. So it's depending on where you place the objects relative to the light source, you can kind of set up a hierarchy of visual interest. Oh, but first we're going to be posting this on Instagram, so we got to get vertical, which is also nice for being able to set up dynamic compositions. Like this is actually kind of interesting. Let's set up that cyberpunky alley type setup. I'm going to use my little font maneuver here. Text, yes. Where are we? There we go. And I'm going to load in the food font. There we go. Fast food icons. Yes. And let's figure out something that we like. Just gonna hit letters until I see something good. Yes. Okay. I like the pizza. Let's do the pizza. So gonna rotate that 90 degrees here. Maybe scale it up. I'm gonna turn fill to none, and I'm gonna turn geometry bevel depth up a little bit. And look at that. We've made a neon sign. Gonna give it a material. You already know it's going to be an emissive material because we're making a little neon deal. Here, we'll just make it a nice kind of weird pink color. We'll probably tweak the brightness later, but how does that look? Yep. Hey, let's make a backing for it too. I'm going to duplicate this, move it back. Let's give it a different material, just a dark one. Again, turn down the specular. And I'm going to turn up the depth here just to give it like a backing. And this looks kind of silly, but like in the dark, it should work okay. Here, turn the base color down even more. And we can stick this somewhere in our alley here. And that's good, but here, I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected. I'm going to add a light to kind of supplement it too. Just because I really want these small things to kind of separate the alley into different colored sections, maybe. Let's see if we can match the color of that a little bit. And I'm going to get rid of this spotlight up above and just really dial in this look first. Here, let's get a little bit wider. One nice and dramatic. We'll keep the camera low. Let's put something else over here. This will be a blue one, maybe. Let's do one more blue one, kind of just down the way a little bit. Just kind of separate it into kind of, warm foreground, bluish background. And we'll do the exact same thing we did here, but with like a different thing. Yeah, all right, we'll do this soda. That's good. It's a soda speakeasy. That's excellent. And here, let's get rid of this material and give it a different one that'll match that kind of bluish light. Cool. Here, we'll make that like 22 also. Cool. And here, let's fix the road to make it just a little bit more interesting. I don't totally know how this will go, but let's plug this into the normal map through a bump map just to give it a little bit of texture. Here, plug this into the height, turn the distance down to like 0.1 and maybe dial it in just a little bit like that. I'm also going to plug this into the roughness and just actually that kind of feels wet. That feels good. Let's just stick with that. Gonna add one more little something here. Yeah, of course we'll do a donut. That's pretty cool. And let's add something to the end of the alley here too. Let's hit F3, search for images as planes, and we're just gonna find one that kind of works here. Let's try that one. And here we'll change the emit to like maybe like 3. That might be a little bit too strong, but we'll see. Just stick it here way off in the back. Oh, too far. We'll just stick it way off in the background here, scale it up, and how's that look? And that dominates the composition a little more than I want. I want the center focus to be the middle, like the middle depth of the alley, not the background. So I'm going to turn this down more. We might play around with that a little bit more later. Now let's see. I do want to have some humans doing stuff, but I don't want to have, that's a whole project right there. So I'm just going to use Mixamo, which is kind of cheating, but most of these guys are pretty wacky. So let's just use the SWAT guy. Yeah, and let's give him a dynamic pose. Let's see. Yes, here we go. We're gonna do kind of an Akira thing. Download, and now let's just find a regular dude, which doesn't really exist in Mixamo. Here, let's do Josh. Josh just looks like a regular guy, and he's going to be having an Akira afternoon. And okay, Joe's going to get a female action pose, and that'll work fine. And this will be guy who is Akira-ing. File import FBX. Guy who is Akira-ing. And I want to put him right here in the foreground, and I want to really separate like the midground from the foreground using one of those lights in the middle. But to really emphasize it here, let's set up a spotlight up above here, maybe right there. Make it nice and bright. We'll probably tweak that later. Turn the size way down. And that's already reading pretty good, but let's make it a little bit bluish, kind of match the color temperature of that depth. And let's add some volumetrics. I'm going to set up a big cube. Encapsulates the entire scene here. Make sure it works from the sides too. Give it a new material. This will just be haze. Delete this, just create a volume scatter. Plug that into the volume. Turn the density way down, maybe 0.01. How's that? Hey, all right. I don't like how shiny he is. I think that's not actually doing any favors. I'm not sure what they're trying to do, so I'm going to turn that way down. I might play with that for other stuff too. And let's find our Akira'd man. Guy who got Akira'd, yes. And this is actually feeling a little too wide. I want to narrow everything up a little bit. So I'm going to grab all of this stuff and just slide it over a little bit. Narrow the whole thing up nice and good. And how does that feel? Yeah, I like that a bit more. In fact, let's widen the camera even more. I want it nice and dramatic here. Maybe even brighten this up more. I'm actually going to duplicate this spotlight, narrow it up a little bit, and I want it to be really bright right on him. We've kind of got a Mr. Bean scenario going on. This is Mr. Bean's origins. You didn't even know. And let's tighten it back up. Finding the right composition can be kind of tricky. And if I wanted to, I could make it kind of panoramic. Could get like a nice wide angle thing going on, which would actually probably help, just enhance the perspective of the scene. I like that. It just means it's harder to select stuff because the 3D scene doesn't get distorted along with the lens, and so sometimes it's easier to do that at the end. Let's bring in the industrial Greeble of love. File, append, street boxes. Is it 6? Yes. Okay, let's grab one of these. There we go. Okay, that's good. Here, let's go into solid mode real quick, and I want to add kind of just walkways and stuff as if there's like uh, uh rails for putting cables, and also this thing's really good for being fire escapes and things like that. Let's add a railing right here where like somebody might come out and like take their smoke break. And how hard would it be to actually turn this into a fire escape? I think it's basically already ready. We'll just kind of slip it. Whoa, slip it up here. It's hard to work in this narrow space, so I'm gonna go to view, widen this way up so I can kind of see more of what what I'm doing. This piece is an asset I shared years ago, but I still use it all the time. It's just so good for just like, look at that. It just adds so much little nonsense details everywhere so quickly. Here, let's rotate it 90 degrees. Now it looks like a completely different thing. And most they want to use it to just add a lot more detail, like these windows here. We line it up here and suddenly it looks like it's like a window frame type situation. Cool. And I'm going to turn off the haze real quick just so we can really dial in the look of this guy's pose right here. I want him a little closer. I want him a little bit more obvious. I think it's important to be able to see his head as part of the silhouette to really get a sense of like what the shape looks like. So there we go. I think that probably works a little bit better. Yeah, that reads as a dude. Ooh, kind of fun seeing it from the side here. I want to add like a little walkway type deal. Let's rotate this, kind of just make it fill the above area, and I want it to barely be framing in the top of, yeah. Yeah, I just want it kind of framing in the top of the thing there so we can't see where he's being sucked up into. And it would be kind of interesting to add like some white light back into the scene like we were talking about, but I don't know if this is exactly the way to do it. Like we could have a foreground deal up here, which is cool because it kind of implies there is more, off in that direction, but I don't know if it's really doing us any favors in this case. But yeah, definitely prefer it. That's fun. I love that now with path tracers and how fast things can render, you can literally just play with stuff and see how it works. You can actually just make your composition through sheer, playing around. But I want even more like punch out of these spotlights, so I'm going to try moving them to a place where they'll be hitting the like the foreground buildings a little bit, and maybe ideally hitting some of this foreground area a bit more too. Also going to brighten up this one too. 55,000. And yeah, okay, there we go. That's interesting. That said, I want to add even more volumetrics. So let's use some smoke elements. F3 images as planes. Let's do slow diagonal here. Cool, and I'll delete this, and this is just going to be our mix factor between a translucent and a transparent. And of course, here we'll mix them together and drag this into the mix factor and the shader into the surface output. And as a rule, I always have to get these backwards first, but now we've got a little bit of translucency going on, and it's hard to see. And I think that's okay, but here, let's just punch it up. Converter, color ramp. If we Control-Shift click on this, we can see, what we're doing a little bit better. Raise the brightness there, and now ideally if we have this under a light source, it'll really pop. So there, you can kind of see what we're working with here. In fact, I'm going to turn off the haze just to make it really obvious, and I'm hoping I can use this to add some more stuff to separate this guy from the background without feeling, without having to sculpt the composition too much. And here, let's grab it and put one in front of this pink pizza sign too. I think that'll be kind of cool. Although now it looks like it's kind of showing us we're clipping here, so I might bring that down just a tad. And I'm gonna move. Let's try moving the camera around a little bit and just see if we can figure out, if this angle works. It feels more natural from kind of a head height, and I could move it over like this so that it's like, everything is silhouetted in front of the light source, which That's actually kind of interesting. Maybe we'll do that. I wasn't expecting to do that, but that's kind of cool. We might still kind of get this guy off to some side or another. This guy's material, the fact that he's like straight black doesn't really help us, but I think that's okay. And also, this is Cyberpunk, so let's add some big cables to everything. I'm gonna try here. Let's just create a Bezier curve. Tab into edit mode. Delete that. I'm gonna go into draw freehand spline, and let's see how that goes. Okay, cool. Oh, I like that a lot. So we can just draw a bunch of different cables here, and it smooths them out. There's a setting here if we wanted to make it not so smooth, but I think this is pretty nice. Is this too many? Yes, yes it is. Let's grab this one and bring it up there too. I don't know what this will look like. Here, let's turn the bevel up just a little bit, and now we can grab all these and actually line them up. We could put more effort into this if we wanted to, but we won't right now. Let's give it a material, new, dark. This will be like just a, dark cable. Pretty good here. I'm going to grab some of these and hit Alt S to scale them up a little bit more, make them nice and thick. Yeah, that's good. It does look more like he got tangled in the wires as he was falling out from like an above apartment. I was kind of thinking it was like, he's connected by cables to a ship that was drawing him up or something. But that's okay. This guy in the foreground is kind of the weakest link. I think he just looks very too shiny here. Let's disconnect the roughness and yeah, I'd rather have no specular highlight than. And because we do have this kind of very dramatic 1 point perspective, let's emphasize it a little bit. F3, images as planes, and I'm going to go into Chromefell's lighting collection that he made. It's got a bunch of really good ones here. Let's go to emit, strength of 3, scale it down. I'm just going to line these up underneath the bridge as if it's, just an alley light source. And the bright light sources do kind of muddy things up a little bit, but because it's so in line with directing the eye towards this central area where the action's happening, I think it works okay. It's time for the haircut. And okay, how's it look? You tell me if it looked horrible, right? And this is a little silly, but I kind of like to do as much as possible in the viewport. So let's add a little diffusion. Here I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift A, add a plane. Because I have a copy attributes add-on activated, I can select the plane and then shift click on the camera and hit Control C, copy, location, and rotation to line those up. So it means I can easily just move this plane so it's, filling up the entire frame here. Let's give it a new material called refraction. Yes, and already you can see it makes everything nice and blurry, which is fun. I want to turn the index of refraction down to like 1.1 so it isn't bending, the light too much. You can see we get this nice. In fact, let's go like 1.05 and turn the roughness up to like 2. And that's kind of interesting. Adds a nice glow, and all we have to do is combine that with a transparent shader. And we get to decide kind of how much glow there is. Of course, this doesn't make any sense. You should just do this in in post. I don't know. I'm being silly right now. It does mean you can tint everything though. Like if we tint the refraction shader, we can be like, ooh yeah, let's dial in. It's green now. It's I don't know. It's kind of fun being able to do that, with just a plane in the viewport. Actually, that doesn't look half bad. Here, let me turn down the saturation a little bit. Like, yeah, compared to that, I'm actually kind of digging that. Okay, yeah, we're keeping it. The one thing I would say is that I do wish there was just a hint of green somewhere in it. Now it's all just like a very narrow section of color, and I want like it's blue and red, and I want some sort of yellowish green just to balance it all out. And I guess the way to do that is just add one more sign over here. So I'll just put the pizza over there, and let's just find a piece of food that we like. This is a very bizarre cyberpunk alley. It's all just junk food. I kind of like it. I'm torn between condiments or a pretzel. A pretzel so bold visually, And we'll make this one, that greenish yellow. Maybe shrink it down a little. Shift S, cursor to selection, because I want to create a little light that's also kind of that color. It might be a bit much, but let's see. And okay, I think my little diffusion experiment isn't that great. And let's see, since this pizza is such a point of contrast, let's deck it out a little bit here. Let's see, can I select it? Yes, I'm going to select this and the background. Shift S, cursor to selected, just to make sure we're working on that plane. And I'm going to create a curve here, line it up with the pizza, and I'm going to use this circle as the path that the text is going to follow, so I can kind of have it like curve around the pizza. And so I want that text to have the same origin point as this. So I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, which moves it there. So we can hit Shift A, add text. And let's see, let's rotate this 90 degrees. I haven't done this in a minute, but let's call it Rocher. Do you guys remember Rocher? He was like a CG artist back in like 2000. He made the coolest stuff as far as I was concerned. I ripped him off horribly, like all the time. He was very gracious about it. So, okay, we've got that. Let's see, is there a different font we want to use? We'll just go big and bold. That'll work good. And let's see if it's easy as going into modifiers, going curve, and selecting our Bezier circle. Oh, look at that! It actually worked. We just scale it down a little bit and move it over. And let's copy this color here. And yeah, that's pretty good. We could do the same thing we wanted with this other back face here, but I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to do that. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Ties it all together, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. We do need more of the Greeble of love, though. Look at this. Oh yeah, there we go. Just add some grills and things going on here. That fleshes it out. Anyways, I'm kind of just stalling because I think this is actually kind of done. But I am going to do the stage where I just mess around and change things at the last second just to make sure I'm not like missing some cool camera angle that I hadn't considered. So let's see. And this is looking okay, but I do want a little bit more separation here. And I don't know. I'm gonna try turning up the volumetric haze like over double, and that's it's a bit much, but I don't mind it. But also, I'm really excited by how well drawing the different curves to make those cables went. So let's try that again. Here, let's create a Bezier curve. Where are you? There you are. I'm gonna delete that. Go into the curve mode, and I'm just gonna draw like a tangle of cables like this. Um, is this gonna work? I have no idea. Here, we'll clean up some of these upper ones here. Um, turn up the the bevel depth a little. Here, let's get these guys up there too. And I'm gonna select one of these, go to random. You turn on proportional editing and go to random, so we can offset all of these at kind of different amounts, have them not all be completely two-dimensional. Maybe rotate them a little bit. And yeah, now we got a little wire wad. Yeah, let's try sticking this in the scene. And let's add one more, like, I want to duplicate one of these upper lights here. So I'm just going to duplicate this, make it really narrow. I want him in that really tight beam, you know? So just tighten that down. And let's see what happens. This is 55. Let's make it 100,000 watts. Is that a million watts? That may have been a million watts. Yes, and see how that looks. Yeah, okay, that's really popping. And what if I I actually want it to be rim lighting him a little bit. So I'm gonna move it further this way and just try hitting him straight on like that and see if that gives us a little bit more detail there. Yeah, okay. And here's the render after compositing. I keep going back and forth. I keep being like, oh, this is too saturated. Oh, this is too undersaturated. I should make this more red. This is too green. But I think this is a fine kind of happy medium. I like it. I did the compositing in Blender here. I kind of I blurred it a bit and mixed it back into the original to get a little bit of diffusion. And I pushed a lot of shadows and midtones to be a little bit warmer. Boosted the contrast, desaturated everything just a little bit, and everything was feeling a little bit much so from the color balance. So I mixed it back in with just the original render to tone it down a little. I shifted the hue here. I was shifting the reds to be a little bit more orange because just the red blue felt so kind of on the nose that I kind of like pushing it a little bit to orange greenish. Added just a touch of lens distortion. Dispersion does a little bit of chromatic aberration, and And yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Although I was being kind of critical on those other alley renders earlier, and so let's be just as critical with this one. I think a lot of it's just kind of a bit much so for my preferences, like the amount of vapor floating around, every possible light source, and the intensity of the different color temperatures. Like it's all maybe just a little bit much. Obviously, this guy looks a little bit CG. His pant legs just kind of look like gray cylinders, and we could grime him up. We could add basically actually anything to add little variations to his silhouette would help a ton. There's a thing that happens to me sometimes, especially when I'm working with color, where I just kind of keep pushing stuff, and especially if like I'm working in the scene, then I jump into the composite and all of that. I'm always just pulling things around until everything's just a little bit too intense. And the solution to that is to kind of just sleep on it, come back the next day with fresh eyes, and be like, oh, and usually it's really obvious what you want to change. But in this case, I want to post the video tonight, so this will just be what it is forever. Thanks for hanging out. This one was a little bit all over the place, but yeah, I got a lot of other stuff I'm kind of focusing on with trying to figure out all of these composites and things that I'm excited to share what I figure out soon. And I hope you had some fun hanging out. I'll talk to you soon.